wasting
med school
seats and blah blah blah. I would never quit like them.
virtue signaling. All right, my friends, time for another AMA. This is actually the same hotel I did a previous AMA earlier in this year at, but I was sitting on the couch where you guys are right now, and we flipped the camera. We're out here in Kyoto, Japan, and we're gonna answer some of your questions from YouTube community posts as well as Instagram. So if you want your question asked, or rather if you want your question answered in an upcoming video, then make sure you subscribe and leave your comments on Instagram and the community posts when we ask for them. All right, let's start with some medical related questions. The first is, how did the So You Want to Be series start? There was actually a car channel that, I think it was Fitment Industries was the channel, and the host had a So You Want a blank car, and he would explain the pros and cons and the history of the car and the ownership experience, things like that. And it gave me the idea that so you want this car, or maybe it was so you wanna, or I forget the exact phrasing. And I figured that to do a So You Want to Be specialty would also probably be very well received. And we go through each specialty. We talk about the training path, the pros and cons, the misconceptions, the reality, what you'd like about it, what you won't like about it, and then ultimately whether or not it's a good fit for you. So I think we have about 50 videos right now on the So You Want to Be playlist on Med School Insiders. It is by far our number one playlist, and people love the series, and we're constantly working on new ones. We either just released one or will be releasing one very soon. And if you guys want a specific specialty, we do actually source and keep metrics on the number of times different specialties or different professions are requested in the comments, and that will move things up or down in terms of prioritization. What pearls of wisdom would you give to a prospective PhD student in pharmacology? I'm a third-year chemistry major who plans to become a pharmacologist in the future. Now, first of all, keep in mind that with Med School Insiders and with this channel, we focus on the MD path, so I'll do my best here, but keep in mind, I'm not an expert on what it's like to be a pharmacologist, although we should do a So You Want to Be episode on pharmacology in the future. Pharmacology, at least from my MD med school perspective, there's so much to memorize and it's less about comprehension. So now in college, practice using those different types of memorization techniques, whether it's the method of loci, the memory palace, flashcards. And I also used these summary sheets where I would compare and contrast things, and it's an active learning process because you're creating the table or the comparison yourself and you're sourcing information from different places. Those were the three that worked best for me. Most effective way to better your chances of getting into medical school with completed undergrad 3.1 GPA. 3.1 is definitely on the lower end and you want to get that up. So the most common routes are doing a post-bac or an SMP, a special master's program. And we talk more about that on the Med School Insiders channel and on the blog, the pros and cons of each, how to approach them, things like that. A video highlighting Puerto Rican medical schools. This cycle I got an acceptance at a good DO school and a Puerto Rican MD program. I have no idea which one to go to. That's a great idea. We're gonna add that on the list because Puerto Rican medical schools are a distinct category separate from Caribbean medical schools, which are not, I mean, Puerto Rico is a territory of the US, and the other Caribbean schools, which I have done videos on this channel and on MSI, are a different category. Those are international. So that's a great idea. We should cover Puerto Rican medical schools and the pros and cons and how to choose between DO versus a Puerto Rican MD and so on. And since you just got accepted, you have several months to decide. So we're gonna try to get that out before you have to decide. And I hope that video helps. What doctor specialty would match with me if I love sports and anatomy and physiology? The first thing that comes to mind is sports medicine, which there are a few different routes you can get to, and we cover that on So You Want to Be, and orthopedic surgery. The main thing you would need to decide there between the two is, do you want to be surgical or do you not? And that's gonna help you decide whether ortho or sports medicine. Would you still have quit plastic surgery residency if you had around 250K in debt? How would that change the calculus of your decision, if at all? Honestly, probably wouldn't. So I had 50K at graduating, I think 30K med school, 20K undergrad. But by the time I was in residency, because of the YouTube channel, and we had this video, how to wake up early and not be miserable, that went viral, and we made like 6K in 1 month, and it was just me at the time. So it was essentially all profit, minus the whatever software I was using, that was a one-time fee. So I started taking that money, just throwing it towards my loans, the money I was making from YouTube. So by the time I was in residency, or rather I should say about to leave residency, I think it was about 30K left. 30K versus 250K, huge difference. The risk, I mean, the cost benefit analysis really shifts there, because now you're concerned about making payments. And with 30K, I'm like, okay, I can afford the payments, and I'm sure that I can pay this off relatively quickly. And I ended up paying it off within a year from leaving residency. But 250K, I don't know, man. On one hand, I do think I'm more risk tolerant than the average MD, which is not saying much because I think they tend to be very risk averse. But I'm not as risk tolerant as a lot of my entrepreneur friends that just right out of college started trying businesses and such. So I really don't know. I don't know. I think plastic surgery would have, continuing that route is way lower risk. I would have been confident about the payment plan and paying things off, and maybe I would have considered coming back to entrepreneurship later on after completing residency. That's my initial thoughts right now, because 250K is a lot of money. Great question. How difficult is it for IMGs to match into university programs, and how can they help make themselves more competitive? With IMGs and FMGs, international medical graduates and foreign medical graduates, IMGs are essentially those that are from the US then go overseas to do their medical school, and then they come back for residency. FMGs are born and raised overseas, do all their training overseas, and then want to come here for residency. It's challenging for both. There are a few main things you want to look at. The first, of course, is being your STEP scores, your USMLE Step 2 scores. That's going to be very important. Number 2 is your networking. So when you're doing away rotations, or when you're doing research years, oftentimes international and foreign graduates will do multiple research years at a given institution, help them crank out a lot of research and build those relationships, show your work ethic, get strong letters of recommendation. And oftentimes you even match at that program if you were a really strong research year candidate and applicant. And then that ties into the third thing, which is research. So publications, presentations, abstracts, those are all factors that very much increase your desirability to these residency programs. And speaking of which, we do have a research course that goes A to Z. I had over 60 research items, and Dr. Sean Anderson, Dr. Jubbal Patel, who helped co-create that course, also have over 60. So there's different tactics you can do. And it's not about, you could focus on getting one publication in Nature or Science or some top tier journal. High risk, and what is much lower risk and still very impactful is churning out a ton of publications at not as high impact factor journals. And even if your research doesn't move the needle of medicine and healthcare in a significant way, which for most of us it doesn't, because let's be real here, we're spending so much time and energy and bandwidth on our medical training, it's okay. Because in this process of cranking out a lot of publications, you are learning the system, you're learning what works, what doesn't, you're in the peer review process. Make sure these are good peer reviewed journals, not predatory journals. There's a lot of utility and value that comes from that, which programs will appreciate, since you'll be publishing, hopefully, and helping them with research projects when you match for residency. What would have been your second choice of surgical specialty, and which general surgery subspecialty would you choose? Okay, so I was most interested in hand. It was actually micro and hand, but because micro has a much more challenging lifestyle, they call it a young man's sport, since very long surgeries, and then the call, if your flap is having perfusion issues after the fact, the lifestyle just isn't as conducive as you age. So back when I was considering where I wanted to take my plastic surgery training, I was very much keeping in mind that, hey, I know I'm going to age and things will change, and my priorities and what I enjoy and my energy levels will also shift. So hand was what I landed on, because you had a lot of that meticulous, fine detail while also having a better lifestyle. Although I didn't like that you had to sit. I liked standing in the OR. I guess you don't have to sit, but they oftentimes would sit, and that would exacerbate my lower back pain. But anyways, because I liked hand, ortho is another route to get to hand. But ortho itself did not appeal to me as much, but I might have justified the several years of orthopedic surgery residency to then get to hand fellowship and then do hand in the future. The other one I would have probably said ENT, but if I'm being honest, out of all the subspecialties within plastics, craniofacial was my least favorite. And craniofacial versus ENT, there's overlap, but they're also very distinct and different. But I just think that the anatomy and the fluids and such, I just didn't love that area of the body as much as other parts. I never got any exposure to urology. I just loved their sense of humor when you met the urologist in the hospital. And as for general surgery subspecialty, maybe CT or vascular. I know vascular has a lot of that very meticulous, detail-oriented nature. I didn't get exposure to vascular, but I think that would have appealed to me very much. And then CT as well. I think that there's a concern with interventional cards overlapping with some of the cardiothoracic surgery stuff. And I actually do remember that in med school as being a reason that made me hesitant and more cautious to consider CT. But ignoring that part, I think the anatomy and the types of surgery are, from my outside perspective, seem very exciting, seem very sexy. But of course, you need to get a lot of exposure to the bread and butter of each of these specialties before you make a decision, because it's not just the sexy, glamorous stuff, it's the bread and butter that is going to be your day in and day out. Can someone with subtle tremor become a plastic surgeon? That's going to depend on your type of tremor. There's a whole different, whole bunch of them. And it depends on the severity, it depends on the type of tremor, what can actually alleviate it. You'd have to speak with your doctor, and hopefully it's something that you can work through. But if it's very significant, that would obviously cause issues for certain types of, actually a lot of types of surgery, especially the more minute, detailed, really precise surgical procedures. I've got a question for you. I've noticed that you and I think a lot alike from your videos, even to the point where I've been dreaming of getting a manual Lotus Emira. My guy, good taste in cars. And that's the car you ended up getting. By the way, more info on my car channel, Jubbal and Cars, right up here. So I was wondering, if you were in my position, an IMG Caribbean student, and can only match into IMG-friendly specialties, what specialty would you have gone with, fellowships included? Also assuming you complete the residency fellowship. Just curious, gotta include that last part, especially with me. So, okay, that took a bit of a turn. I thought we were going more car related, but now I see why this is under the medical questions. I don't think the Lotus is not a super expensive car. It's a sports car, but it's not a supercar or anything like that. Don't focus too much on the compensation of a specialty. Any specialty you choose will give you a comfortable lifestyle. You're gonna be making 300K plus. Well, I guess some primary care, 250K plus, right? And at that point, making an extra 50 or 100 or 200K is nice, don't get me wrong, but it's not the most important thing. Once you have such a great income, what matters more is whether or not you enjoy the specialty, enjoy the day-to-day, enjoy your job and your career, and then your financial discipline, your saving habits, your lifestyle, avoiding lifestyle inflation, etc., etc. And then you can buy any of these cars. You can get your Cayman or your Emira, which are the two, at that level. You can get your M2, which is also up there, but a little bit lower, your Supra, etc. Please don't make a decision of specialty based on compensation as the primary factor, because you got to keep in mind, you're going to be doing this 40 to 50, maybe even 60 hours a week, depending on what your specialty is, for decades and decades. About to finish college and start med school, a couple years, anything I should do before? Do not study for med school, please. Some people focus on that and it's largely wasted effort, and there's very little upside that comes from that, but a lot of downside. Don't do that. So I went straight through. I started med school at 21. But if I started it at 23, 24, 25, I would have spent those few years experimenting with different things that interested me, which would be computer science and entrepreneurship. I wasn't really actually that into entrepreneurship until midway through med school. I would just explore and let my curiosity guide me, but I would definitely be getting work experience to support myself and to pay off whatever college loans I had. I'd probably spend some time traveling, which is expensive, but the reason I'm able to travel even to this day is because of credit cards and churning and credit card point optimization, which I've talked about in previous videos, and that would cover it. That's plenty to do in just a couple years. What drove you to put in more work than your peers back in med school and residency? That's a very insightful question. I think it actually started and was strongest in college because I got sick with ulcerative colitis, Crohn's disease. Mine's actually Crohn's colitis. It's like a hybrid between the two. It's a Crohn's disease pattern limited to the colon. Very challenging time, and a lot of family issues and financial issues at the same time. Well, actually like 2 months afterwards, which it was such a unhappy time in my life that I felt just angry at the world, and I felt very angry at certain people in my life, that the only way I found it reasonable to channel that anger and negativity was to sublimate it into my work, into working harder than anyone else, And I think part of that too was this level of inadequacy I felt. I felt that now that I had this condition, there was something wrong with me, and I was concerned, and other people would also make comments that you aren't going to be able to work as hard, stress is going to aggravate your condition, you need more rest, you can't eat certain things, you gotta, there was a lot of, now you're fucked. And I didn't like that feeling. And I said, no, and I'm gonna prove you guys wrong, both to the external world. It's not like people were saying that to my face, right? It was more internal that there were some family members that told me, hey, chill, you're very hardworking, but you gotta focus on your health. So it wasn't from a place of malice, but in my mind and in my head, it was something that I felt inadequate about, and I wanted to prove to myself and to the others in my head that I can do just as much, if not more, than you guys, to just prove that this is not a limitation, which is not a healthy way to approach things long term. But I think during that time, it was the best, absolutely the best way to handle it. That negative fuel is not something you want to use for years and years. But again, for those few years in college and during during medical school, I think it was valid. During residency is when it kept going up and up and up, where I started getting too much of my self-worth and identity from my productivity and my accomplishments and how hard I worked. And I knew that, there are a lot of people out there that come from privilege and they don't have to work as hard to get from here to here. But if I'm starting from here and want to go up to here, I will have to work harder. And it got to the point where in residency, I was like, you know what? This is just not sustainable. I'm sleeping like 3 to 4 hours a night on average. I'm doing a plastic surgery residency, a surgical residency that's already very challenging. Plus I have med school insiders, plus I had Blue Link at the time, plus I'm starting MEM, and then I'm also talking to my plastic surgery chair about starting some AI imaging tool. And I was like, what the hell are you doing, man? Like, why are you so focused on working all the time? You don't want any free time, just work. And this is not sustainable. So I had to do a lot of self-work and such, and now I think I'm at a healthier point. It's always a work in progress, but you probably weren't expecting all that from your question, but that's the truth of it, which is that oftentimes it's like, are you running towards something or running away from something? And I think for me, it was very much running away from something. And now at this point in my life, I think there's both running away from and running toward, but I think I can see that balance shifting more toward it being running towards something. Is it possible to become a surgeon with clumsy hands? Great question. For the most part, yes, because most people who go into surgery are able to improve their dexterity and their skills in the operating room. That is not an issue. However, I have seen some surgeons I should say surgical residents that got held back. I think it was like their third year. I'm thinking about one person who was in general surgery that had to repeat third year like 2 or 3 separate times, and they ultimately couldn't graduate from general surgery residency because they just didn't have the surgical skills to proceed with their training. So it's rare, but it does occasionally happen. I think the reason it's so rare is that it's self-selecting. If you're going to something surgical, you must enjoy working with your hands and operating, and if you are terrible with your hands, you probably don't enjoy surgery and operating and even practicing your knots and whatever else, since we tend to like the things that we're good at. Is getting to med school the hardest part? The bias people have is to always think what they did in the past is easier than it actually was. So what you're gonna hear from other people is that,
oh, pre-med was a piece of cake. Oh, med school was a piece of cake. Or residency was a piece of cake. Attending life is hard.
or I guess a lot of people will say residency was the hardest and then, each thing before was easier. I don't agree. I think that it's a bias that we have to be very mindful of. And when you are mindful of that bias, you can control for that and be a little bit more, hopefully, truthful and accurate with your recollection. So the hardest part of medical training, as a pre-med, the hardest part is you probably suck at studying, which is why we have the whole playlist on study strategies and my first ever video on how to study as a pre-med, what I wish I knew back in college. That is going to be a huge part of it to getting good grades. It's avoiding distractions. It's having the discipline to work harder when there are so many things happening, so many parties and social events that you're tempted to attend. But you know that to get into med school, you have to have really good grades, you need to do well in your MCAT, etc. Also balancing and juggling multiple extracurriculars, because pre-med is the one time you have to have a ton of extracurriculars, whereas during med school residency, not really. Now in med school, the volume of information is much higher, but I think the difficulty of that information is actually much lower. So now it's about volume more so than critical thinking, understanding. There is still some critical thinking, don't get me wrong, but it's not the same as physics, or even chemistry is. People like to think, like, I would actually argue that the MCAT has both memorization and critical thinking, but the balance is a little bit more critical thinking, a little bit less memorization, whereas USMLE STEP is the opposite. It has both, but it's a little bit more memorization, a little bit less critical thinking. It depends on what your strengths are. For me, my critical thinking is way better developed than my memorization skills, and I need to work much harder to get my memorization where I want it to be versus my critical thinking. So I was a neuroscience major in college, and many people complained that neuroscience and biomedical engineering were the two hardest pre-med majors. It depends on your skill set, right? So I remember 4th year, I had gotten accepted to med school, and I was like, I'm gonna chill. And on one of the midterms in this neuroscience upper division class was about action potentials. The whole class was just action potentials. And the instructor asks a hypothetical scenario on the test. So you couldn't have studied for it other than just understanding the core foundations of the class. You had to use critical thinking. And I remember I was underprepared, I didn't study much, but I still got a very high score. I think I was second highest in the class. I didn't set the curve, but I was, I think, the second one. And that was the point when I realized, well, actually that wasn't the point, hold on. Then after that, everyone told me that psychobiology classes were the easiest. And I was like, dude, I need to finally chill. I've worked way too hard in college. Let me just enjoy these last few months. So I do a psychology upper division, and I get a B on the midterm. I'm like, what the hell? I gotta get an A in this class before the quarter's over. So I had to study so hard on the final exam to make sure I got a high enough A to then get an A in the class. And that's when it hit me. I didn't study much for the first one, got an excellent grade. I studied, a medium amount, definitely harder for the second one, and I got a B. The second one was just a multiple choice regurgitation, memorization of the textbook. The first one was critical thinking. And that's when I realized that my relative skill set. So med school for me, in a sense, was more challenging, but what made it a lot less challenging was focusing on the study strategies that I only learned in med school. I didn't know those study strategies in college. That would have made memorization a lot easier. So know your strengths. The hard part in med school is the volume of information, and if you're not used to working as hard in college, then there's an adjustment there as well. And then later on in med school, your clinical years, your last 2 years, you're working in the hospital, and now it's much more about, you kind of got a brown nose a little bit, which is unfortunate, and I find very distasteful and just not something that I enjoy. But you're being evaluated, so it's not just working hard, but making sure it looks like you're working hard and being very polite and respectful and being friendly. And if you're gonna make a joke, make sure it's not an off-color joke or can be misconstrued or is even 1% offensive. You have to be on your toes. And then you are still studying, but now you don't have control of your time. So I think the hardest part for me was my 4th year away rotations, because with plastic surgery and many other surgical rotations, they will work you hard. There was a week where I was working 18 to 19-hour days back to back to back, and that's in the hospital. So by the time you clock out, you have to go home. There's a drive time to and from the hospital. You're eating, you're showering, you don't get much time to sleep. That was the hardest time. But my other friends who went into internal medicine, family medicine, didn't have that experience during their sub-internships. And then residency is like, it's not as bad as those sub-internships because you're not having to deal with the crazy hours plus being worried about your evaluation and all that stuff. You're focused on just the hard hours and the work and doing what you feel is required. But residency is very long. So then it's more about endurance. There are different parts that are hard about them, but don't let anyone tell you that, oh, the earlier part was super easy, because they're just extremely biased and are unaware of their own bias. Imagine you're 25 with BS in computer science and wanted to be a doctor. What would you do? If you didn't do your pre-med prerequisites, then you need to go to a post-bac to get those done. If you did do it, then apply. And having an MD with a computer science background is super powerful this day and age. I'd be all about that. Major in computer science, maybe take an extra year if you need to hit all your prereqs with good grades. Yeah, man, you can do a lot of incredible stuff. MD and comp sci. All right, we got a lot of great questions from the Zach Hiley reaction video. So the first one, what do you think about the backlash toward YouTube doctors who have quit med school as of recent, such as Zach Hiley's and Life by Maggie and others? Zach Hiley and many others, I think that you get backlash from people who are either jealous or who want to virtue signal and are salty for other reasons. You don't get much backlash and this very aggressive, negative stance from those whose opinion I actually respect. Now, that's not to say you can't criticize them. I mean, I critiqued Zach and I've critiqued the other people who've quit medicine in the past. And if you want to see what critiques I have, then please do watch those videos. And you'll see comments as well from people who are attending physicians and so on that explain their take, but their take is never completely negative. Like,
oh my God, these people are wasting med school seats and blah, blah, blah. I would never quit like them.
Virtue signaling. Instead, these people tend to be very balanced to say, hey, it looks like this person was burned out or had X, Y, and Z priorities or whatever. And let this be a learning lesson to us all for these various things. That's the take that I like, where you find that middle ground where there's things you can learn from, but you're also not making someone out to be wrong and bad and evil and whatever for no reason. No unfounded reason like that. Is it possible to enjoy residency? Because Dr. Okusanya from Zach Hiley's interview said he enjoyed the tough process, rare doc, or rosy retrospection bias. I have some friends who enjoyed residency more than others. I think a big part of it is the specialty you choose and the program you're at. There are certain specialties and certain programs that are known to be more malignant and just way tougher to endure for 3 to 5 to 6 to 7 years. And others that, I don't know, man, I do think it's absolutely possible to enjoy residency. What would help is you have a realistic understanding as to what residency is, so expectations. I think part of it is your time, and that comes from two sides. One side is the specialty and the demands and the program. Surgical specialties and more old school specialties are going to be more demanding and challenging from your time perspective. But then the other side is your own, how much time do you make for yourself? Meaning, how well developed is your own time management strategies? That's going to make a huge difference in terms of being able to feel like you can relax and sleep enough and exercise and survive without feeling like you're constantly short on time. Not having too many other outside interests, looking at people like me that have multiple businesses that they're running on the side, that decreases your time a lot. And yeah, I'd actually say those are the two biggest things. Improving your time management and efficiency strategies, being productive, etc., as well as not having too many other things on the side. And I think your likelihood of enjoying residency increases from those. Oh, this question, yes. Some people are accusing you of being a little fake and too money-minded, like a finance bro or something. I was wondering if you wanted to address those allegations. First of all, I don't give a fuck. You only have haters once you're notable enough to warrant haters. I'm not saying that anyone who has haters is by definition a good person, or what I'm saying is that everyone who has done anything meaningful has haters. So I remember my first hater comment, I was in South Africa back in 2016, and that video, the sleep video, was popping off, and we hit 16,000 subscribers, and I had my first hater comment, which called me a dickhead. And I ran to the kitchen and I told my friend, I was like, oh my God, look, someone called me a dickhead. And she was like, why are you excited? What's wrong with you? I was like, don't you get it? Now I'm a YouTuber, I got haters. When you're small, everyone's just super positive and encouraging, and they don't want to say anything that's even constructive criticism because they don't want to hurt your feelings. And I'm like, no, like, you keep it real. So this guy calling me a dickhead, I'm like, now I'm finally a YouTuber. So what this commenter is saying, the only time I've seen another comment like that is, there's this guy, Gary Linkoff, who did a reaction video to me quitting. I didn't watch his full video, but someone sent me the link and I looked at the comments on the top. And I remember one of the comments said, finance bro wanted to make more money, which I found hilarious because when I was sitting making those videos in my mom's backyard, during that time, I was making like $1,000 from YouTube. The channel had, kind of slumped a bit, and I couldn't afford rent, and I was at my mom's place, and not a very, there's no place inside the house that I could film. So I had to go to the backyard and film videos. And it was a tough, challenging time. And the haters then would say, you're an idiot, you quit plastic surgery, now you're a YouTuber, you're gonna regret this decision. Because clearly I wasn't where I wanted to be, in the sense that I'm filming in my mom's backyard. And then you fast forward a few years, and now I'm clearly doing much better than that. And now the haters change their tune, where now it's like, oh, he just wanted the money, he just wanted X, Y, and Z, which is like, you're always gonna have haters, so I just don't give a fuck. And you just can't waste your time on the opinions of those who just wanna tear you down. If there is constructive criticism that you can derive from that, awesome. But like, people that are saying that I'm too money-minded or a finance bro, it's like, bro, if I was focused on money above all, I would have done aesthetic plastic surgery. I was already in residency. I did the hardest part, getting into the plastic surgery residency program, which requires you to, all the things that come before that, for your step 2, your research, your MCAT, getting to like the whole thing. I'm there. All I gotta do now is endure, and then bam, in 6 years, aesthetic plastic surgeon and making bank. But I knew for myself how important enjoying my work would be. I've told stories about, like the rush you get from operating and how things get more routine. And I realized how important job satisfaction is for me. I realized how important health is, how fragile health is. I've been hospitalized for my gut condition. I knew that long term, if I got this one life and I want to make it really count, there is a riskier choice here that is not guaranteed to make as much money. And that's okay, because it has other things that I do value more. And I have this other choice, which is also great. I actually didn't, people think I hated plastics. I didn't. I loved both. And I feel like I was so lucky to have both as options. But I wasn't going to be doing aesthetic plastic surgery, even though it made more money, because I knew the excitement just isn't there for me. And the reconstructive stuff is what I fell in love with. That's the stuff that excites me. Anyways, silly comments from silly haters that I'm not going to give any weight to because they're just unfounded. And if you are doing your own creative pursuits and you get haters, just keep that in mind, man. It only matters if you make it matter. And I'm not gonna say that no commenter has ever gotten under my skin or like made me think, damn, that's actually valid and that's hard to hear. But these ones don't. Maybe I have slightly thicker skin than average for content creators, but you have to, the really thoughtful, really insightful comments that are pointing at things that you could do better are the ones that you wanna listen to. And the other ones, don't worry about them. Yeah, when you fund your own education and end up with 300K plus in loans, then come and tell me that you just quit. All the hard work and dedication that we put in, these stories are just too negative. Good luck to those who are posting these online and think they are doing a service. They are doing a service. Okay, we'll get to that in a sec. To me, they went in for the wrong reasons, either status or money or both. But those of us who go in for purely because of the inner calling and also fund our own education, we're the ones who stay through and end of the day. That smile on my patient's face and that glim of hope, or a thank you from a schizophrenic patient who was deemed dangerous before treatment, make my day. Sorry for the rant. However, we need to hear from physicians like me and not those people who take up residency spots and then whatever, only to post a video saying, I quit, geez. Oh my God, dude, this is a grade A example of a virtue signaler. This person is saying that anyone else who quit went in for the wrong reasons and they're great and they went in for the right reasons and they don't care about money or status at all. Here's the truth. This person is full of shit. What they fail to understand is the reality that people can go into medicine and have changes in values, perspectives, life desires to then no longer want to be in medicine. And they think that if you do have any change of heart or desires or perspective, or you grow in any way as a human, that I hope all you guys do over the course of 10 fucking years, that you would be the exact same person and want the exact same things and have the exact same priorities. This is a person with a very immature and fixed mindset that I just don't respect at all. But I want to highlight this in this video here, since these comments are rampant on Reddit and on YouTube. People just love to hate. The truth is, status or money or both. If being a doctor did not have any prestige and would only give you 50K per year in terms of salary, very, very few people would want to be a doctor. There would be no competition to get into med school. Now, am I saying that you should go into medicine because of money or status? Obviously not. But to have this black and white language is just so immature and is so virtue signaling and just so cringe. Status and money is part of becoming a doctor. Should that be your primary reason? No. But to deny it and to make it seem wrong and to say that that's not a reality for anyone, people like to think in black and white because they're not serious thinkers. They don't have the capacity to balance things in their head and talk to the gray, which is harder to do, I get it. But when they combine that with the virtue signaling, it's just so cringe. Real quick, I want to tell you guys about the Balance and Wellness Scholarship. We're doing this annually at Med School Insiders, and we provide $5,000 worth of Med School Insider services for free to the winner. This year was Dat Dang, and he had this very creative, very well done video. You have to check it out. And you can actually see his video, the runner-ups, and also prior year winners on our website at medschoolinsiders.com/scholarship, also linked below. And the submissions this year were excellent. We were very impressed. This year, we also awarded a group of finalists with free access to our most popular courses. And if you missed out this year, fear not, because we'll be running it again next year and the year after that, and so on. All right, hobbies and interests. First, how many watches do you have and which one is your favorite? I have probably close to 24, or definitely more than a dozen. I mean, I still have the watches that my mom got me from Costco when I was like 10 years old and I first got into watches, right? The small Wenger for like 60 bucks at Costco, or the small Skagen I got. I think that was like a college graduation gift. My little calculator watch. Like, I have all these watches because they have sentimental value, and I think reselling them for 30 bucks or 50 bucks just isn't worth the sentimental value. But my current favorite watch would probably be either my Omega Speedmaster. That is the watch I bought for myself last year as a symbolic thing that this is what I had promised myself for completing residency. And obviously I did not complete residency. I quit plastic surgery residency, but it was symbolic in the sense that I would have completed it then. And yet instead I took a bet on myself. I did the higher risk thing. I worked really hard, harder than I would have worked in residency, and things worked out. So this was my reminder to believe in yourself and to work hard and bet on yourself and that kind of thing. The other watch was the Grand Seiko SGBA 443 that I got here in Japan earlier in April, which is the first time I came to Japan. It's a gorgeous watch. Saw Formula One Grand Prix, and I've always wanted to go to Japan since I was younger, and I even had a trip planned in 2020, but that fell through because it was in January, but COVID was raging in Asia at the time, and given my condition and I'm on an immunosuppressive drug, I was like, it's not worth the risk. And anyways, yeah, those are my two favorite watches. I just got this on this trip as a 34th birthday celebration gift to myself, which is I'm forgetting the model name, but it's an open heart mechanical watch, which kind of controversial in the watch community world. A lot of people find them too tacky, but I thought it was cool. Mechanical watch, open heart, 40-hour power reserve, and put it on this funky fabric strap. What's one of your guilty pleasures? Cars are definitely up there as maybe my model cars. I used to make model cars as a kid. Nowadays I don't make them anymore. And I buy a lot of these different model cars from Auto Art or from Costco or just from various places online. It's just something that I did as a kid. We had a little collection of Costco model cars. I think Maisto is the brand, if I'm not mistaken. And those got lost over the years. And just recently, a couple years ago, I thought, those are great, I miss them. So I'm recreating a new car collection now of model cars. I just learned you're a car guy. What got you into cars? I mean, earliest memories when I was like 3 years old were around cars, drawing cars, model cars, or toy cars, I should say, not model cars at that time. I had a little go-kart, like a pedal-powered go-kart in the backyard. I was just always obsessed with cars. I think a lot of people think you need to have money to enjoy cars, which is not true. If you want to drive fancy cars, then having money helps. But you can play with RC cars, you can draw cars, you can watch car reviews on YouTube or read car magazines like Car and Driver, which is my favorite. You can attend car shows. A lot of these Cars and Coffee weekend meets, casual meets are for free. There's no tickets or anything. By the way, if you are into cars, then Jubbal and Cars YouTube channel right up here, where I do driving focused reviews of cars. And I'm also doing more sim racing this year. I'm on iRacing and excited for the new Assetto Corsa. And we'll probably have a new streaming channel just for shits and giggles around that too. But favorite tea and how to brew it. My favorite tea was probably the Spring Alishan. It was like 2021 or 2020. I forget what year the Spring Alishan was, but it's like a rolled oolong. I love oolongs. And I would brew it at 205 degrees Fahrenheit, and so like right below boiling, which is 212. You can do it gong fu style, which is the Chinese way where you have the gaiwan, the small cup, and your ratio of tea to water is higher. Or you can do what I tend to do now is I put it in this brewing cup where there's fewer pieces to clean, is a little bit faster, and you put less tea, more water, same temperature, but just longer steep time. And experiment a bit. Each tea is gonna have a different optimal temperature and different optimal steep time. So that was one of my favorites. And these days, I just have a whole bunch of oolongs at my house. I don't remember off the top of my head what's my current favorite, but duck shit oolong and Spring Alishan are my two favorites. And yes, it is duck shit. There's a whole story that goes with that, which you can look up. Favorite movies. I'm not a huge movie buff. I watch a couple movies per year. And I am now an old man that doesn't even like going to the movie theaters. I just watch things at home. I like movies that make you think. I like The Prestige was a great movie. Dark Knight was a great movie. Memento, I realize I like a lot of Christopher Nolan movies. Who is your favorite MedTube vlogger? Obviously, the one and only Sean Anderson. Question also asked by the one and only Sean Anderson. All right, on to entrepreneurship. I want to start in entrepreneurship but I don't know how or what to do. I'm a freshman. What can you advise? I'll appreciate anything. At this point, watch creators like Alex Hormozy to learn more about entrepreneurship and learn more about business. Follow your interests with regards to what area of entrepreneurship, because entrepreneurship is just so broad that it's not a narrow path like with medicine, right? So get out there, try different things, start your own thing, your own little side hustle. In this day and age, it's easier than ever. You can do something in AI, you can do something that's content creator related, you can do something that is coding related if you know how to program or you want to learn how to program. So my advice is get started with something that interests you, and if you like it, double down, and if you don't like it, then try something else. But that rapid feedback loop of trying different things and changing or doubling down is what is going to, it's something that a lot of people wish they had another opportunity at, because as they get older, they get pigeonholed into whatever career and they can't take the same risks. People have families, they got to support people. Take advantage of that. It's a special time. If you could go back to your first day of college, would you still choose pre-med? Would you go straight into business or something else? I like my path. The only thing I would reconsider is if I wanted to do computer science pre-med, which was a consideration back then, but I thought it would be too difficult to get good grades and do the extracurriculars and do everything else. I probably just, the idea of doing 5 years for college rather than just 4, or like do 4.5 years even, seemed so unappealing to me. It seemed like, no, you shouldn't do that, which in reality doesn't matter. So I would probably do comp sci pre-med and just take an extra quarter or two to make sure I had enough time to do all my classes. Dina, always great questions. How happy are you at this point in your life? Did you achieve everything you want to achieve? I still have many more things I want to achieve, and I think that's a constant, the goalposts move, but it's also, once you reach a goal, you realize that a lot of the fun is in the pursuit and in the journey. So it's not even just about the goalposts moving, it's also about constantly striving towards something is fun. It is an autotelic activity, right? It is rewarding in and of itself, not just a means to an end, but striving and pushing yourself hard is something that I don't want to ever stop, because it provides me a lot of fun and value. I am much happier now than I was a couple years ago. I think part of the reason is that I feel less lonely now. I was definitely feeling very lonely during COVID, during lockdown. I realized that everyone has different levels of introversion, extroversion, and I definitely need more contact with people than I thought. But then when I was trying to force that by socializing on weekdays, I just felt like I don't know, there's a lot of stuff that was going on. Part of it is friend groups, part of it was how I was spending my time, part of it was judgment from myself about how I shouldn't work so hard, and I should do more of this, and I should do more of that. And this whole idea of should and shouldn't is toxic, and you have to be very mindful of that. What has happened in the last, I don't know, however long it's been, is accepting what I like and don't like and not having as much judgment about it. So on weekdays, I just like working. I wake up, I work, I do a meeting with my team most days of the week on my bike around 10 or 11 a.m. I eat my lunch, I keep working, I get a gym session in for about 90 minutes, I come back home, I work, I eat dinner, I sleep. So weekdays are literally just exercising and working and eating. That's it. 5 days a week. The weekends are where now I allow myself to spend my time however I just feel like. Sometimes I want to be more socializing, sometimes I want to be more car focused and do more car reviews. Sometimes I want to travel, I want to go to Japan, right? And I think having less judgment, I think I judged the work part too much, saying that, I was working too hard and I shouldn't be working so hard, I need to have better balance. And it's like, well, everyone has their own balance, and why can't that just be my balance? If I want to work hard 5 days a week and then on the weekends relax a little bit and travel or do car stuff or whatever. I think that has been a big shift. And also, change is exciting. So we're doing some exciting things at Med School Insiders. We're doing some exciting things with the personal brand, with the Kevin Jubbal website, with Jubbal and cars. Change is exciting, and applying myself toward these endeavors at a high intensity is exciting, is fun, is rewarding. So definitely happier now. I think being in a relationship has also helped me a lot too, especially with the loneliness part, because if you're working 5 days a week, head down, and you're not socializing much, then it's easy to start feeling lonely. So yeah, not gonna say my life is perfect, but I'm pretty happy. And I think one thing I brought up in my last AMA was comparison and competition are not bad things in and of themselves. It depends on how you use it. I think competition and comparison can sometimes help drive you in a productive way, but it can be damaging if you place too much weight into that. When I think of comparison, and competition, I like that it spurs me on. And I also think that, again, per that previous video, that where I am now compared to where I started or where I was at 18 years old, 19 years old, 20 years old, I'm very proud of, I'm very thankful for, very grateful for, and I know that there's more great stuff to come. All right, holiday gifts. Do you have any Christmas gift suggestions? So going back to the tea conversation, the two places I get a lot of my tea now are number one, Tea Bloom, and number two, Tea and Whisk. Tea and Whisk is local to Las Vegas, but they also do ship. Both of these places have sales. We have a special coupon code you can use down in the description. And then during Black Friday, I think Tea Bloom has 30% off on November 29th and 30th. And I think Tea and Whisk is gonna have a sale as well. But if you use our code, you get a special discount, which is linked below. Some other things, I would say based on your budget, one thing I've been enjoying a lot recently is actually this. So these two devices from two different companies. This was from one of my buddies in plastic surgery who I'm still in touch with. This is called a Muse headband. And this is the Heart Math Institute. It's like a heart rate tracker, heart rate variability. So you put this on your ear, tracks your heart rate, and this goes on your head like an EEG. And my buddy from plastic surgery residency has gotten very much into spirituality and such in a secular way. And secular spirituality is something that appeals to me, but spirituality that's more in the woo-woo direction is always something that I was a bit averse to, never really gelled with me. So here with these two tools, you use these apps, and the apps are Mind Monitor and Mesmerize, but then you can also use the Heart Math Institute and the Muse headband, their own apps as well. I'm experimenting with the Muse headband app because they have this thing called like an alpha score, and it's essentially HRV for your brain. So I need to do a few more sessions for it to tell me what my alpha score is. And essentially, the reason I like these is you use these two tools when you're meditating, and it provides you feedback. So it's a way to quantify your meditation efforts. You can see yourself improve, and you can also see what different brain wave states feel like. So what does alpha wave actually feel like? Well, you can see when you feel that really light, euphoric, happy feeling, oh, I was in primarily alpha. And as someone that loves tracking and data, I find this fun, exciting, and it gives me another layer of depth to my meditation, because previously I did a lot of waking up meditations with Sam Harris, which is great. Again, secular meditation that vibes with me. But sometimes you have a good session, sometimes you have a bad session. There's no way to quantify or track, and this is a way which I guess you could argue is kind of antithetical to what meditation is supposed to be about. But as long as you're not getting too caught up with the data and the tracking and such, I think it can be fun and actually add additional value. Another one would be Levels CGM. Recently found out that out of my 3 immediate family members, all 3 of them are either pre-diabetic or diabetic, which is wild to me because looking at them, you wouldn't think so. But South Asians have BMI shifted, and then also certain families and genetics just have higher propensity. So very, very grateful for Levels and their app that integrates with the CGM. I'm wearing one every single day, even when I'm traveling. It helps me make better decisions. I care very much about my health, and with modern society, especially in the US, it is far more challenging than it should be to eat in a healthy way and to reduce your risk for things like metabolic dysfunction, diabetes. So grateful for that. I've already changed a lot of eating habits. One of my coaches back in the day said that, he said, oh yeah, a lot of my Indian clients eat a lot of carbs. I was like, dude, I don't even eat that many carbs. And then after wearing a CGM with Levels and just being more mindful about how to avoid spikes, having more fibrous veggies first before I have carbs, which I can have later on, and exercise before and after meals, and sleep and stress and all these things, which I've actually covered in a previous video, like my main takeaways from wearing a CGM. I have seen how suboptimal my prior eating was, and I used to think I was eating pretty healthy, but this is a way to customize and personalize with feedback, with actual hard data, whether or not the way you're eating does suit your body versus the average body or someone else's body. So very thankful for that. And you get 2 months for free on an annual subscription of Levels using my link down below. All right, some other ones. Actually, I'm gonna show you packing cubes. All right, another gift idea. This is right from my suitcase. I travel with these all the time. Peak Design packing cubes. Put your clean clothes here on one side, and then you have a pocket on the other side for your dirty clothes. And then it also has the expansion compression zipper, so you can fit a lot of stuff in here. I have both the small and the medium, and I bought these years ago, pre-pandemic, and the zipper on one of them broke. I reached out to their warranty team. They sent me a new one. I think it's a lifetime warranty. Really like these a lot. And even my mom saw them when I was traveling with her, and even she loves them. So I'm gonna get her a pair actually for the holidays. I got 2 other ideas. One is gonna be Kaizen. So Kaizen, I miss rice. I no longer have rice because of the way that my body responds to it. I have a massive sugar spike. So Kaizen is this company that's making essentially low carb rice. I can eat it. I feel like I'm enjoying rice again, but I'm not spiking. And that's something my girlfriend will cook for us occasionally back home, that when I'm craving some rice or kind of carby feeling food, then we go with Kaizen because I get that feeling without the spike. Use code Jubbal for 15% off. And then the final one is my Wahoo Kicker bike. So I do road cycling, and you can ride indoors, like in Vegas. It's the weather is oftentimes throughout the year not optimal for riding. So I do a lot of indoor riding, and what you can do is you take off the back wheel and you put it on the smart trainer, and then it connects to your computer or your phone or your tablet, and you can control the resistance. So you're riding your actual bike on the smart trainer indoors. And I did that for years and years. It was a Wahoo Kicker Core, and I recommend that product for those who want a single, more affordable solution that allows you to use your actual bike. But recently I bought a Wahoo Kicker Bike Shift, which is their cheaper. They have like a motion one, which I didn't care for. So I got the cheaper one, the Shift. And you don't have to worry about moving your bike indoor, outdoor, putting the wheel on and off. You don't have to worry about lubing your chain, because even on the indoor trainer, you got to lube your chain every couple hundred miles or whatever. There's no issues with shifting. It just works. And I got the bike trainer desk, can do my meetings. It is on the higher end in terms of budget. So if you are buying it for someone, then lucky them. I use mine almost every day, and it's a huge game changer. And as always, links down below for special discounts. All right, back to your questions. What's the best gift you ever got for Christmas or your birthday? I tend to very much enjoy sentimental gifts. When people create a photo book or like some kind of special thing, I appreciate those very much. And also gifts that I use on a very regular basis. So getting things like tea or something fitness related. I actually got a Wahoo Element. My first ever bike computer was a gift from my mom. I think that was like a Christmas present several years ago. And that was a game changer, because now I was taking my cycling much more seriously rather than just riding around and tracking rides using my phone. I had a bike computer that was much more accurate, and then I eventually bought a power meter, and that's probably one of my favorite gifts. There is another product that I've been using and testing for the last several months. It's related to hair loss. If you guys saw in a previous video, I think it was my 72-hour fast video, I had a lot of hair thinning and I got concerned. I started taking hair loss a lot more seriously ever since then. I started doing much more research on it, trying different therapies, and I think I've landed on the best solution. I actually like this solution so much that I'm investing in the company and advising the company, and I'm doing a few data-backed things with a lot of personalized testing for my hair to maintain the hairline I have right now so that it doesn't recede anymore. And even restoring some of that lower density in the front here that you can see from that prior video. So can't give away all the secrets yet because it's not public yet, but I've been using the product. I've been very happy with it. And you can actually sign up on the waitlist if you are interested in trying it out in 2025 and beyond, using the link down in the description. I do very much think that this is going to be a game changer for the hair loss industry. And the guy who's running the show has that customer first obsessive nature, kind of like Bezos did with Amazon, right? Everything was all about what makes the customer experience better. And his approach here is providing so much value to the customer. I think this will completely shake up the hair loss industry in a way that once you guys see it, you'll be like, why didn't anyone think of doing this sooner? This is data backed, it's thorough, it is all comprehensive, it is the best that science has to offer right now. And it's gonna be big. And again, waitlist down in the description. How do you manage anxiety? What do you do for your mental health? Do you meditate? I'm getting into it and would love some recommendations. Yeah, so going back, Waking Up app is what I used. That's with Sam Harris guided meditations. I've been using that since like 2018, 2019, on and off. Very much enjoyed that. I then have done some HRV training with Elite HRV and a chest heart rate strap. Now what I'm using are the HeartMath and the Muse headbands. They also do have guided meditations, but those two apps I mentioned earlier, those are not guided, and they're just gonna visually show you during and after your session where you are. brain state wise. One guy mentioned that carnivore diet instantly relieved my anxiety and depression. We'd love to hear your thoughts on carnivore. My initial thoughts are that carnivore diet is likely going to have a lot of issues with it in terms of micronutrients, but that's just my initial thought. And I'm no expert, and maybe the carnivore diet is totally appropriate for certain people that have certain biological makeup and microbiomes and et cetera, where it can be very beneficial. So I'm not gonna say it's good or bad. I'm gonna say that I just don't know much about it. And it doesn't seem like something that I would want to try personally. It doesn't seem very pleasant, and it does contradict much of what I do know about eating healthy and fiber and things like that. But again, it might work for some people. I've never tried it, and I don't intend to. Although I am going to be working on some functional medicine diet stuff and elimination diets when I return from this Japan trip, because I do think there's a lot of optimization for me with my diet, not just based on my blood sugar with levels, as we talked about, but also my gut microbiome. I do probiotics for my IBD, but then there's also a lot of dietary intervention I can do to really keep things under control and reduce the number of little hiccups that I experience. All right, sleep. How do you manage to sleep while traveling to Japan with the time zone changes and jet lag? This year I actually struggled more than I expected. It's a 16-hour difference, or you can even think of it as an 8-hour difference, right? Because of the 24-hour clock. And normally I adjust within like a day or two. But this time I struggled more. Generally, my approach has always been just stay up and suck it in when you're tired until it's a reasonable time to sleep. So don't sleep at 2 p.m. until 7 p.m. because now you're fucked to sleep during the night. But if you suck it up and just try to stay awake until 8 p.m., then you can fall asleep and wake up at 3 or 4 a.m. the next day, and now you're mostly adjusted to the new time zone. That's what I've done earlier this year for Japan and for India, and I didn't have any issues. This time, for whatever reason, even though I slept at 8 or 9, I would wake up at like 2 or 3, and I wasn't able to fall back asleep. So it took me a couple extra days to get adjusted. Part of that too is if you're sleeping next to someone and they disturb you, that can be part of it. Part of it is just, am I tired enough to maintain sleep during that time and not wake up when my circadian rhythm would want me to wake up? One thing that does help, and what I did last night that actually helped a lot, is having a really intense workout so that you're so tired. And then also, of course, you walk throughout Japan, 20,000 steps, plus your intense workout, that you're so exhausted you fall asleep for 8-9 hours. And I felt amazing waking up today. Are you in Japan? If so, welcome to Japan. Yes, so that photo on the community post was from my prior Japan trip in April of this year, and I'm staying at the same hotel, which, that little gate is right outside. And thank you. I am so excited to be in Japan, and I love your guys' hospitality here and just how friendly everyone is, and the attention to detail and the food and the efficiency and how travel just works. It's an awesome place. What do I miss most when I travel? Now, when it comes to sleeping well and traveling, I do always carry an eye mask. So the eye mask I use is actually this one. It's the Manta Sleep eye mask. They have a few different products. I tried the one that has like cooled eye pads. I don't really care for that. Just the regular one. It's a lot better. They actually sent me one back in 2018, and the eye cups were too small, anatomically just did not fit the actual orbital rim here, and like you would have gaps in light. I gave them feedback. I'm sure it wasn't just me, but other people also giving feedback. They have now updated their design. This works really well. I use this in the States as well when if I'm not sleeping at my own place and there's light. These are comfortable. They completely block out light, and when I'm on the plane, I use this in the hotels. Hopefully they have blackout curtains, and if not, I use this. Another thing would be my 8 sleep, which I do miss. At home I have that. Cools my bed early in the night to help me fall asleep, and then tracks my sleep, which is cool, but more importantly, adjust the temperature at a few different points over the night so I can maintain sleep for longer. So here, I'm sometimes waking up at 2, 3 a.m. Part of that is because it's too hot all of a sudden. So the 8 sleep is an awesome way to help me fall asleep, which is my biggest issue, and also maintain sleep throughout the night. And again, links to all these items with special discounts down in the description. Someone asked for a VisBiome review. I use VisBiome, not every day. I've been kind of inconsistent the last year or so. Part of that is they increased their price, and I was like, dude, let me see if I can just get by with like more yogurt instead. But also when I'm traveling and such, it can sometimes just be, you have to refrigerate it, and it is the one formulation that has been tested for those that have inflammatory bowel disease, ulcerative colitis specifically. So that's why I use it, but I don't necessarily, there's so many different factors happening day to day that influence how my gut is feeling that I can't say whether or not using VisBiome significantly improves my symptoms or not, because again, my sleep, my exercise, my diet, stress, all those other things also influence it. And if I'm using a probiotic for several weeks or several months at a time and then going off and on, it's hard to say. But that is the one that I spend $90 or $100 on every single month just to get those probiotics. Best tips to stay fit when, oh, and by the way, this is now the wellness category. So best tips to stay fit when recovering from an injury. I, unfortunately, have a good amount of experience dealing with injuries, and the most important thing I would say is to work around them. I find it very damaging and regressive. You take many steps back by saying, oh, I'm injured, I can't work out, versus saying, oh, my foot is injured, or my hip is injured, let me do upper body instead, or hey, my shoulder's injured, let me do everything except for things that aggravate my shoulder. So a lot of it is working around the injury and then also working intentionally to rehab it. And I have experimented with so many different PTs and coaches and all that stuff. And Trevor Hash, he has a YouTube channel as well. I found him through YouTube, bought his product through YouTube, and he's been coaching me through that product since. My shoulder's feeling so much better now a year later. I can finally do bench press again and overhead shoulder press without this being achy and having a lot of issues. So huge shout out to Trevor. His details are down in the description. He's been my coach, helping me with shoulder stuff and also foot stuff. So I've had issues with a lot of the right side of my body, my right knee, my right foot, my right hip, my right shoulder. And a lot of it he's showing me is rooted from shoulder issues and foot issues. So we're working on both of those things to rehab and improve my movement patterns and my control while also doing strength training. We're not doing just one or the other. We're hitting the strength training and working around the injuries while also doing the rehab. I think that's very important. What is your favorite part of your morning and night routines? My favorite part, for the last, 6 years now, I always have the lights in my own home turn red at 8 p.m. as my indication to start winding down, get ready for bed. I do miss that when I travel. Those are with my Philips Hue lights back home. That to me is very calming and helps wind me down. I've been very much enjoying the meditation. Sometimes I get in bed and I have racing thoughts. I can't sleep. So doing the Muse and Heart Math Institute meditation, that does such a shift to get me from overthinking state to calm, ready to sleep state, and also just feels good in the moment. And then sometimes, I'm not as consistent anymore since now my pain throughout the body is pretty well controlled, but I used to do a stretching routine. I used to do it mostly in the mornings, but sometimes I would do it at night as well. I don't do it as frequently anymore, but that was enjoyable. It feels good, it feels relaxing. At night and in the morning, it can actually help you feel ready to tackle the day because you're sometimes feeling kind of stiff when you wake up. Those would be my favorite parts. All right, final section, lifestyle. I really want to cover what made you choose contacts over usual lenses. You always cover why you choose some med decision, and this is really important to me. I've been thinking about doing a LASIK procedure, and I want to know from your perspective. I don't have much issue wearing contacts. That's the main thing. I do believe that myopia, nearsightedness, which is what I have, and might be what you have. I'm not sure if you have farsightedness or nearsightedness, but most people these days have nearsightedness, which is myopia. I do think it is somewhat, I don't know if it's, for some people with discipline, it can be fully reversible, I'm sure, but I do think it is somewhat reversible. And dude, I remember my optometrist when I was in college. I'm studying for the MCAT, and you learn a little bit about how the eye works. And I told him, hey, shouldn't I not have too strong of lenses because it's gonna make my nearsightedness worse? And he said, oh no, that doesn't make sense. That's nonsense. Well, based on the ciliary body and the lens and yada yada, I had a reason to believe. I'm pretty sure that's how it works. He says no. Fast forward a year or two, I'm now in my preclinical years at med school, and we have our neuro and eye anatomy and physiology, and I approach him again with the same exact thing I mentioned from when I was a pre-med. But now, because I was a med student, he took me more seriously, which is silly. It was literally the same argument, and he agreed with me this time. So what I have purposefully done is reduced the power slightly, such that my nearsightedness does not get worse. Because when I am looking at something close like my phone or my computer throughout the day, if I have a strong prescription, my ciliary muscles, right, are working harder, and I'm pushing that extreme further and further, that my nearsightedness is likely to get worse. So I dial it back a little bit. So my my far vision is maybe not 20/20, maybe it's a little bit worse than that, but it's still totally good enough. And it has also stabilized my myopia. So LASIK, I think a lot of people are happy with it. I know some people that have done it, and the chronic eye dryness afterwards seems so annoying. I have this friend who has like, he experiences a lot of dryness, and he's like constantly doing these like heavy blinks throughout the day. And he says he was disappointed by LASIK because the eye dryness, chronic eye dryness, which causes issues. And then also over time, if you're not changing your eye hygiene and looking in the distance and spending too much time on the computer, yada yada, then the nearsightedness can start returning again. So that's why I haven't done it. The benefit, I think, might not be as big as what a lot of the people that hype it up make it out to be. And then the cost of contacts just isn't very high to me either. When I put my contacts in the morning, the rest of the day, I feel like I'm not wearing contacts until the night, and then I take them out. It's not a big deal. Happy Halloween. What was your costume? I didn't dress up this year. Last 2 years, I was Obama. Favorite Indian food? As a kid, it was aloo puri. And nowadays, aloo puri with raita on the side. Like the yogurt, the spiced yogurt on the side. I really like that spiced yogurt a lot. Nowadays, I would say, I don't really do aloo puri. It's just so carby. And I would just go to Spike City. And I also just don't find, I think my taste profile preferences have changed too, as I've tried to be more healthy with this kind of thing. Maybe like tandoori chicken with lacha paratha. Yeah, I had some lacha paratha for the first time in India earlier this year, like the layered flaky paratha and some sabzi, like some vegetable dish on the side. I don't really have a favorite vegetable dish, honestly. Future vacation spots, coming back to Japan, gonna be going to Italy, and doing the Philippines next year too. Do you think YouTuber car content causes people to overspend on vehicles and modifications? Hashtag FOMO. Yeah, I think that it's the culture in general. Our Western consumerist culture does tend to focus more on spending and showing off. And part of that is the culture, but then we shouldn't be blaming the culture when we have our own agency and we can also shift things for ourselves. I like to think that I have not fallen complete victim to that, in the sense that I drove a Scion FRS for 9 years. I drove a Toyota GRA6 for 2 years. These are relatively affordable sports cars, $25,000, $28,000. I just care about the driving experience more so than the flash. And now I have a Lotus Emira, which is more expensive, but it's also not as prestigious or luxurious or brand recognition as a Porsche or whatever. It's about like just be mindful of the pressures that you feel from social media and from the car culture or just larger Western consumerist culture as a whole, and be mindful of that and then control for that. I got my little $250 watch. It's not a fancy, expensive watch, but it's a cool watch. I like it. And, I do have a Speedmaster. It is a much more expensive watch. You don't have to think about everything through the lens of like, how do I flex as hard? That applies to watches, clothes. I don't wear designer clothes because it's just not important to me. And I would argue that cars are the same. You can choose to enjoy cars in the way that you want. I think young, impressionable kids watching certain car vloggers who are constantly buying new cars and modifying them may feel like that's the normal, right thing to do. And I would just say, be mindful of that, because there are a lot of people who would say you can enjoy cars without doing any of that. I kept my FRS and 8.6 mostly stock. I didn't spend a ton of modifications because it wasn't a wise financial decision to do so, and I would have regretted it if I did. And now I'm in a position where I do feel comfortable modifying my Mazda Miata, and I will do so, and I'll track it a lot. But be mindful and intentional, and then you're not gonna fall victim to those kinds of traps. All right, my friends, thanks so much for the questions. This was a fun one, and I'll see you guys in the next one.